couple weeks ago, I played Dying Light for the first time, and the good folks over at Techland watched my review and decided to send me a copy of Dying Light 2 to check out early. And I've got some great news. It's awesome.
Not bad.
I've played around 6 hours of it, so here's what I think about the game so far. Actually, before we get into this, let's talk about bugs. Reviews from places like IGN have already come out, and the game has a lot of problems on console, which sucks. But I've had a completely different experience on PC because I've only seen one bug. In fact, I've got it for you right here. A zombie I needed to kill just fell through the map, disappeared, I couldn't find him, so I loaded my game back, killed it, and kept playing. So if you're expecting me to talk a lot about bugs, this is probably the wrong video because I just didn't have any problems, except for this guy. Towards the end of that Dying Light 1 review, I asked how Dying Light 2 can improve on a game that I already really liked. And then I listed a few ways that it could do that. I said the faces could be better, combat with humans could be better, and it would be nice if you could make decisions like you can in other RPGs. And so far, it feels like this game delivers on all three of those hopes that I personally had. The faces here, they're just miles better in quality and animation. I haven't seen any repeat character models, and the NPCs, they just look great to me. Because of the story, there's a lot more human combat in this game, and adding the ability to parry is such a game changer, where those encounters, they fell a little flat in the first game. As far as making decisions, I've already made one in a side quest that ended up costing someone their life. If these are things you were hoping to see in Dying Light 2, then I think you'll be really happy too. Here's what I'll tell you about the story without spoiling any details. You play as Aiden Caldwell, and similarly to Kyle Crane, he's a voice protagonist where they talk a lot. You get to hear their thoughts and feelings about everything that's going on.
I'm Aiden.
Nice to meet you, Aiden.
At times, I found myself wondering, is this the same voice actor? It's not, but you can tell, like, with the narrative direction, there's a lot of similarities with how they sound and how they act, so it'll feel really familiar if you played the first game. Aiden is what they call a pilgrim, basically a courier around the wasteland, and he's looking for something. So that's what the story is all about. That's the only detail I'll give you. The first 2 or so hours are pretty linear, pretty much like the first game. You get introduced to some main characters, you go through some tutorials, and you learn how this game is different. But then the world opens up like you'd expect from an open world RPG. You can explore, you can do side quests, you can do really whatever you'd like after that point. There's a lot of safe areas in Dying Light 2 where you can walk around and just talk to people, and for the most part, they have interesting things to say or fun side missions to give you. Almost every person I walk up to asks, "Hey, are you that new pilgrim in town?" Or, "Do you have some extra water? I'll trade you something for it." That seems like a very minor detail, but sometimes it's those small little things that make the worlds feel real. Once I hit the open world is when I really started to get Dying Light 2 and what it's trying to do. This feels like one of those sequels where they took a hard look at every single little part of the game, then they decided to keep what they really liked and get rid of what they didn't. For example, there's really no guns in Dying Light 2. I've looked it up. Apparently there is literally one, but it's like a very specific like scenario type of gun. And then there's a couple of ranged options, but for the most part, this is a mostly melee game as opposed to what it used to be. And I can totally live with that. It makes combat a little more interesting when you're not able to just headshot everything after a certain point. Another change that shocked me, there's no way to repair your weapons. Gone are the days of finding your favorite weapon and then just never changing it for the rest of the game. In 6 hours, only 2 of my weapons have broken so far, so they last a pretty long while. And you can add weapon mods that increase durability. But yeah, it took me a second to get used to that change. I guess the idea is they don't want you, again, to just use one weapon or be comfortable. The idea is that you have to kind of scramble and swap and find something in situations where you're kind of screwed. And so far, it hasn't bothered me. But yeah, I'm a little worried later in the game. Like, what if I find something really cool and, you know, sucks, you can't keep it because everything breaks? We'll have to find out if that bothers me later. Another new mechanic is immunity. If Aiden is in the dark for too long, he actually is going to turn into a zombie. So when you enter dark places, even in the day, or if you travel at night, of course, you have to be really careful. There are safe zones marked by UV light, which resets your immunity timer. So you're not completely screwed at night. Like, you can find safe zones and sort of reset your timer. I'm playing the game on hard, and so far it's been pretty manageable, but there's been a few close calls at night where I almost didn't make it. And that's great. That's exactly what I was looking for. Speaking of night, there's a lot more to do this time around. Some activities are actually safer at night. You'll find a few buildings with rare crafting parts or upgrade items, but during the day, you can enter them, but they're full of zombies that are hiding from the light. So it's best to just wait until they clear out in the night in order to grab them. So yeah, there's some really cool mechanics like this that make nighttime more manageable, but also just more useful. And I was worried that this would make nighttime less scary, but so far it really hasn't, because I've had one or two chases where I got that signature dying light, butt clenching, barely escape with my life kind of feeling. Chases are back, and this time around there's a zombie type called a howler that stalks the streets at night. And if you alert these guys, then of course they call the zombie horde after you, which basically makes zombies appear everywhere, even on rooftops. So yeah, like I said, pretty terrifying. Parkour is such a big part of this game, and yeah, it feels great to me. I mean, it feels very similar to the first game, but it's almost like if it's not broken, don't fix it. Yeah, it just works. I haven't unlocked the ability to slide yet, which feels a little weird, but having to manage my stamina makes moving around the world super interesting. Just like the first game, there's skill trees that you have to level up, and as you do more parkour out in the world, you gain agility points, which lets you unlock new abilities. And this time around, there's only 2 skill trees, at least that I know of so far. There's agility for parkour and, power, I believe, for combat. I haven't made a ton of progress in either of these trees yet because I haven't played that much, but then again, it feels like I only just started. One small feature that I'm enjoying a lot is the binoculars. You can pull these out whenever you want to discover new locations and tag them on your map. I always appreciate when a game lets you use your eyeballs to discover things instead of just being like, hey, here's a big map marker, go to this. Windmills are basically like towers in any open world game. They're kind of like the primary scouting location, and each time you climb one of these, you unlock a bunch of stuff. For example, the faction in the area will move into this place, and then you'll get access to their vendors and their quests. Dialogue is a big part of Dying Light 2, and in contrast with the first game, you actually have an active role in it. A lot of the opening hours are spent in cutscenes, and you'll be able to ask questions outside of the option to continue. Sometimes I'm curious about what people have to say or a certain topic, but other times I choose the yellow option to get to the end of the conversation. Like I said earlier, there are definitely some hard decisions to make. I was solving a dispute in a side mission and had to make a tough call on who I let live. I am really hoping to see a lot more of that as I play more. Crafting is something that feels so much better in this game. I didn't like how you had to dive into a menu in the first game to craft something. This time you can just pull up a wheel without pausing. Find the item you want to craft and do it if you have the materials. It takes 2 seconds and you're still in the action. Again, something I really like. It's a good change. I'm finding that I'm using a lot more consumables in this game, and it's probably because I'm playing on hard. In order to make bandages, you need honey and chamomile, which you can find on these roof groves that are around the city. And yeah, on hard, it feels like I can die in 4 or 5 hits. So I've been using these a ton. Let's talk about the new city, Villadore. This place is gorgeous. I mean, compared to the drab, almost monochromatic slums of Haran, this feels like paradise. There's so much green, so many golden yellow trees and red leaves. On my 3080 Ti with, RTX, DLSS, all that stuff, it's really very pretty. But it's also not in a way that betrays the open world zombie feeling. I mean, this place still feels dangerous because even in the daytime, there is danger. Every building you enter that's not a safe zone, it's full of sleeping zombies. Every street you cross either has, unfriendly humans or zombies. It's unsettling in all the right ways. Running and parkouring around this city, it's just a blast. And yeah, I can imagine it'll only get better as I keep playing. Outside of the main story, I've done a decent amount of the side content. There's these GRE areas where you have to kill a special zombie called a Revenant in order to unlock some upgrade items. There's those hidden caches that are safer at night, and yeah, you get some really cool stuff if you actually go for those. And then there's the traditional side quests that involve talking to a character who needs you to do something, then you go and do it and get a reward and continue on your way. There's also things like parkour challenges, which are returning. I tried one of them so far, and yeah, it was pretty difficult. I think I'm going to come back when I get some better agility moves. But perhaps my favorite thing to do so far is encounters. I'm pretty sure Dying Light had these in the form of survivors. Basically, this blue blip will appear near you at any time, and you'll hear this sound cue. Usually for me, it's been a gang of humans are holding someone captive, and they're like screaming for help. But I've also found people who are about to die that are also needing like an immunity boost in order to survive. And if you help them, you get a reward right then and there. This is the kind of dynamic event that we've seen in lots of games for years, but I don't know, they're really fun and they come off as realistic in this world. You can decide to do them or skip them, and there's no real consequence if you're not in the mood. Right now, they are still fresh and exciting, and who knows how long they will stay that way, but yeah, I'm not tired of them yet. Melee combat with humans feels really good. Again, that is one of the things that I wanted to see improve. And again, the ability to parry is so important. One of the first abilities that you get is called the Vault Kick, which only works if you parry. So you parry the enemy, and then when they're staggered, you can jump over them to kick another enemy. It's only one ability, but it turns fighting into this chaotic duel where you're parrying, kicking, and jumping all over the place while dodging enemies and deflecting their attacks. And then the mod system lets you add things like shock and flame effects whenever you get a critical hit. So combining that with things like throwing knives and Molotovs, it's just been really fun so far, especially when I get to burn and shock my enemies to death. Of course, there's so much more to explore. I mean, I haven't even unlocked a fraction of the abilities on the agility or the combat side of the tree yet. So yeah, it feels like I've barely scratched the surface on this thing. And that's pretty much all I have to share so far about my time with Dying Light 2. It's one of those big games that's just hard to put down. It feels like there's so much I haven't seen, and I'm legitimately excited to keep playing. Sometimes you open these huge new games and you're kind of exhausted after the first few hours, and you're like, I could keep playing, but I don't really want to. That's the opposite of what I've experienced so far. I mean, there's so many factions that I'm eager to learn more about, narrative threads that I want to pull on and untangle, areas I want to dive into and explore, enemies I want to take on and defeat. It's really checking all of the boxes that I had for it before launch, and then surprising me with some things too. So yeah, I'm really excited to keep playing, and I definitely plan on making a few more videos on this game as I play more. So that is it for me, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and again, big thanks to Techland for sending me a review code to share with you guys. Dying Light comes out this week on Friday, and yeah, be sure and check it out if you're interested. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give me a like on the page. Also, don't forget to subscribe for my next video. Click the bell so you receive notifications whenever I upload. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.